of NFTs has seen its fair share of fluctuations recently, and the latest report is not very promising. The NFT market has taken a dip, and weekly sales have plummeted by 20% after some gains. According to nonfungible.com, the total sales volume of NFT over the past 7 days was approximately $24.3 million, significantly down from the previous week. This comes after a few weeks of impressive gains in the NFT market, which saw a spike in weekly sales to an all-time high of $102 million in early May. The decline in sales could be attributed to the growing concerns among investors about the sustainability of NFTs as an investment vehicle.
Dashboards compiled on analytics platform Dune, OpenSea, and Blur are seeing notable losses in daily users and sales. According to a Dune dashboard compiled by NFT researcher C-Launch, marketplaces have seen a steady decline to lows that have not been seen since 2021. So a tough past 7 days for the NFT folks. Zach, I'm tossing this one off to you. What's going on? What happened this past week?
There's no money to be made. Look at those people. They're just like, there's nothing to be done here. You know, Blur, I think, is a big story, right? They came and kind of professionalized NFT trading and served sort of that market really well, and they've come to eat a good chunk of OpenSea's lunch. But I think across the sector, there's just not a lot of opportunities out there, right? The buzz is a little bit gone. I saw an interesting headline, speaking of 3AC, I think it was Sotheby's was auctioning off the 3AC NFT portfolio. I don't know how that did, but that was announced either yesterday or the day before. But I think, yeah, buzz around the NFT world is not all the way there. We talked about some of these sort of mainstream loyalty and membership NFT things with Starbucks, you know, kind of doubling down on its efforts there. Those are kind of a different breed, right? They're not necessarily the, you know, for folks looking to make a quick buck, right? They're the digital, like, you know, I voted pin, or like, you know, like I love Starbucks, thumbs up, right? Like these are passionate fans, right? That's one thing. But on this side of the aisle, we have those who are looking at NFTs as a way to make money, right? And that was always kind of one of the main selling points of NFTs. I'm not a huge believer in it's all about community and kumbaya and art. Really, the feature was that you could flip these things pretty quickly and ultimately stand to make a good buck if the market was hot. And it's just not. And I think that's what these numbers suggest or further confirm. But I'll toss it down to David. I'm sure he's got some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think my take here is probably going to be the optimistic one, which is, you know, we're seeing this low, honestly, a long time after the broader market started to unwind. You know, remember that we had Luna crash almost a year ago now. And FTX crashed in November, so like 5 months ago. So these are all macro forces that impact everything in the system, including NFTs. And, you know, if we're just now back down to November 2021 levels, and we're also starting to see things like Bitcoin dominance top out, and maybe a return to at least some bullish sentiment in the market, although I'm at a loss to explain that given broader conditions. But either way, the market is rotating. We've hit a bottom, but you know, and NFTs will probably continue to bleed out for a little while, but it's cyclical. And we're still, I think it's safe to say, way up from where we were 2 years ago. So that's also worth keeping in mind.
Bullish. That was bullish take.
One note maybe on the timing of this. I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but NFT NYC was like a week or two ago, which is kind of the biggest NFT conference. I honestly haven't looked at the charts. I don't report on NFTs. I don't know if there's some boom around that and then some bust right afterwards, but the timing probably isn't coincidental. Maybe it was like last year where nobody showed up and that was like a whole thing. Not nobody showed up, but there was like a whole meme around empty auditoriums and more speakers than actual attendees. So maybe, I don't know, there was a similar narrative there. I genuinely don't know. Maybe one of you does. I wasn't there, which might be news too. But anyway, one of the other things that I'm at least going to be looking at over the long term, outside of the whole price thing around NFTs, is first off, the durability of some of these communities. I, as somebody who wasn't really in the NFT world, have been somewhat impressed seeing some of these like Bored Ape, Mutant Ape. Some of these folks have managed to create, whether you think these are good ideas or bad ideas or silly or cash grabs or whatever, they have, I think, gotten some pretty good mind share and just attention, and you know they've got parties going on all the time, like they're still doing stuff. And then lastly, back to one of the main narratives, royalties and stuff like that. That's something.
Well, I mean, the reality is a lot of these the things that are measured in inflation are somewhat visible. Like you can see what happened with oil prices, and you can see what happened. There are various, indicators of things like used car prices and rent. And so economists can get that dialed out in pretty closely. The thing that maybe is a little bit harder is kind of what's happening with wages, and that's really what I think, there's two things that the Fed's really worried about. Number one is that the way and companies, the CEOs are worried about because it hits their profit margins if they have to pay their employees more. But they don't like this. The wages are rising about 5% per year. The Fed's inflation target is 2%. So they do not, I mean, it sounds bad. It's good for the workers, but it's bad for the Fed, so that's one thing is they probably want to get that number down. But that's not in sight anytime soon because we got a really strong labor market. Let's see the
bull and bear scenarios in terms of price.
The bull and bear in terms of price, Bitcoin price. I know what I was going to say. The Fed is God. I lost it again. But I'll go to your other question. I'll probably remember it. On the upside, Katie Talati Katie Stockton is looking for resistance at 23. So here we are at 21. We're now talking about resistance. So we're on the upside. On the downside, talking about 20. I remembered what I was going to say about the Fed. They're worried that people will start to see these inflation figures at 8% as the new norm. And they'll start to act accordingly. So you can change your behavior and pricing. And that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's why they want to hustle to get the inflation down. Anyway, I don't know if that adds anything, but I finally remembered that.
Yeah. Well, but just looking through your notes, you said that Katie Stockton, based on a reading of the charts, we could see $23,000 Bitcoin, though the rally may not be sustainable too much beyond that. And on the downside, the most obvious point to look at would be $20,000, since price point has been such a battleground between bulls and bears over the past couple of weeks. And Christy, you're anticipating a hot trial coming up that everyone in the Bitcoin community is anticipating, and that's Craig Wright versus Hodl or not.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but Monday, the trial starts. So what we're seeing is Craig Wright, the Australian computer scientist who has long claimed to be the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, is facing off against Bitcoiner Hodl. We do know his real name, but hey, everybody knows him as Hodl. And it goes back to March of 2019 when Hodl published a series of tweets on his relatively small account. He had under 10,000 followers at the time. And he wrote that Craig Wright's claims to be Satoshi were false and called him a fraud and a scammer. And of course, Craig Wright has taken exception to that and is now suing him. And what is exciting about this case, unlike all the other cases that Craig Wright has been involved in that we have followed over the past, is this actually is going to make him prove his point. Is he Satoshi? Can he prove it? We'll see. But next week will be very, very interesting to follow. Wow. And our own Cheyenne Ligon is going to be in Sweden covering the case.